All right, now Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona joins us now for more. Ntate Mabona, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. What's the reaction of the Gauteng Education Department to this breach, particularly that it happened within your province?
No, thanks very much. We just want to appreciate the level of professionalism from our markers, because this would have been detected by our markers in the processes that will unfold when they are, marking the checks and, balances, anything that will have to do with the process of marking. Our markers are professional and they are well trained, because on a yearly basis, there's a process that they go through in terms of making sure that they are well trained. So they would have detected this, and we, as the GDE, reported to the DBE to say this is what we are seeing and we need to have a joint investigation. And that's what we did, and detected that actually the source of this Maya comes from the DBE itself. So from where we are sitting, we want to commend our markers for their vigilance, and also to say we will continue to make sure that we train them so that they can then detect anything that is untoward when coming to the marking process. That's our comment on this matter.
And then what do you think this says about the integrity of the examination system in its entirety?
Well, we are comforted that it's intact, because there's a certain schools that have been identified which are linked to this process. And like as it were, DBS confirmed that there's an investigation that is going ahead. There's a team that is going to probe this matter, and we'll leave it to them. But like they've indicated, it's just over 20 learners that are involved, and they mentioned that it's about 7 schools. So we will then be supporting them in the process of investigation. But we have over 190,000 candidates that were sitting, for this examination. Over 140 of those would have been full-time, and the remainder will then be part-time. So we are comforted that the integrity is not compromised, and those that are implicated should then be taken for a task, as it were.
This may be a bit premature to ask. I mean, you do explain that the process is currently an investigation. And as you've also mentioned, I mean, this leak is only limited to about 7 schools within the Pretoria region. But what measures do you think then need to be taken into place in order to prevent similar incidences in the future?
No, well, from the Gauteng perspective, our processes are intact. This did not come from us. I guess you have captured it very well, and the minister has already explained that it comes from the DBE officials. So if the memorandum or marking guideline was then shared, which is something that was not supposed to be shared, something that must be intact. So from our side, that's why we are commending our markers for the professionalism, and they would have been in a position to detect this. Because if they were not well trained, probably they would not be in a position to detect. So it tells you that as Gauteng, we are intact in terms of the checks and balances, training, and making sure that the integrity is not compromised. So from where we are sitting as the province, we are saying the process has not been, compromised, and we are comforted that all those that said for this examination should be comforted. That's why we are saying we don't suspect anything moving forward.
And how far is the marking process? Is it complete yet?
The process has been complete. We are completing on the 15th. So we should be done with the process, and we will then wait for the release of the results. You'll know that the results will be released on the 12th of January. That's where the minister will be announcing. But the statements of results should be ready on the 13th. That's where all provinces will be pronouncing their results, and they will be honoring the students or the candidates rather that are top or who perform very well in this process.
And Umalusi, they're bringing out a statement saying that those that aren't affected by this breach should expect their results on time.
Definitely. I mean, that's the way to go, because looking at the number of those that are affected by this, it's a drop in an ocean. I mean, looking at the candidates that said in the entire country is over 900,000. In Gauteng, it's just about 200,000. And we're talking about just over 20 learners that are affected by this. So it should not affect the entire process, really.
Well, spokesperson, while we have you here, we know that the first leg of those grade 1 and 8 placements will come to a completion tomorrow in terms of finalizing some of those placements, and then the appeals process will open. There have been some concerns that maybe you could help us clarify with regards to parents saying that their children were placed at schools that were not on their preferred lists. They would then initially decline in terms of that offer that they would be given, but then apparently the system would then accept on their behalf. How would that system work? How does that work?
No, if you are placed in a school that you did not apply to, you are then allowed to object. And when you object online, you then give reasons why you're objecting to that school. And if the objection result is then sent to you to say probably it was successful or unsuccessful, you then have a leeway to then appeal, to the MEC, and you can then also online appeal, and you will then have to wait for that process. So tomorrow we will be updating on how far we've gone, because remember we gave ourselves the 12th, which is tomorrow, to finalize the process of placement. So we should be in a position to update in terms of the numbers and in terms of the way forward on how we're going to be managing this process. But you will recall that we have announced that on the 17th of this month, we are opening the system for those parents or guardians that would have not applied when we open this application process. So we are giving them an opportunity from the 17th to apply. But we should be in a position to give an update tomorrow.
And the appeals don't necessarily have to wait for the 17th?
No, the appeals have been continuing, because remember, an appeal, or let's start with an objection, will be informed by where you are placed, whether you are happy or not. If you're not happy, then you object. But unfortunately, if you are placed at a school that you would have applied to, like for instance, you know that we provide an allocation to apply to 3 or even 5 schools. If you apply to those schools and they are in the list of those that you have chosen, then we are in a position to then, place in one of the schools. Unfortunately, we cannot appeal to something that we've applied to. And we only given an allocation to those that would have not applied to those schools, which we will then be placing them as an alternative, because we would have been highly pressured in the areas where we would have wanting to accommodate them, but we could not. So they will then be in a position to appeal. And if the appeal is not successful, then they can still, or the objection rather, it's not successful, they can appeal. If they appeal, then they will then have to wait for that process. So tomorrow we'll be sharing the data on how many objections we received and we have attended to, and how many appeals we have received, and also we have attended to or outstanding. We should be in a position to provide that information. And also on the placement process, how many out of the number that we have announced when we held our press briefing previously, on how many of those that were finalized. Because remember, when we were conducting our briefing, we said we had about 80,000 of unplaced. So tomorrow we should be in a position to say, out of the 80,000 that we have announced previously, how many have we placed? And if we have those that we probably are outstanding with, how are we going to be managing those?
All right. Steve, thank you so much for your time and just giving us clarity on some of those issues with regards to those placements. That's Steve Mabona, the Gauteng Education spokesperson, just giving their reaction also to the matric exam papers that were leaked at 7 schools in Tshwane.